locations or names in the chat, as we want to respect everyone's privacy and confidentiality. There are 3 icons in the middle of the screen, at the bottom of your screen. They are a microphone, an end call, and a video camera. If you click on the video camera, we won't see you or be distracted if you get up and move around, but you still will be able to watch everything. So that's a nice thing about Google. So there are tools and resources that you will be seeing today that are easy to use, and they can be adapted or used for anyone who may be working with someone who could benefit from them. Hi, Scott. And so I will give you a little background on myself so you don't think I'm just some random person who decided to do a resume webinar. So I have worked as a job coach helping clients look, apply for, and try to understand what types of employment they are qualified for. And I have assisted them in all levels of their job search, from the beginning to the end, working through paperwork, everything. I worked in human resources for Saskatchewan Health, where we regularly handled 50 to 100 resumes a day, which were forwarded to the proper job posting. I have many years of experience as an essential skills instructor, during which time I instructed students on career development, resume and cover letter writing, how to find a job, and budgeting. I was chosen as Educator of the Year for the Canadian in 2014 for the Canadian Tourism Human Resource Council for my work with the Saskatchewan Tourism Education Council and the CTHRC. I was chosen to work on a pilot project for the CTHRC that specifically addressed literacy in entry-level skilled employees. So if you have any questions or you don't want to ask them today, please feel free to send them. Send me an email. You can phone call myself or Marci or anyone on the team, Jasmine or Sheila Anderson, she's our manager, and we will happily answer any questions that you may have. You will be given a lot of information today, so please feel free to take notes and ask any questions that you may have. Today we will be discussing many topics that cover employment, what to do before, during, and after your job search. I have copies of resumes and cover letters that I would be happy to work with you or do a video workshop for you. And if you have any tips that you would like to share with the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat box and we will share them with the group. I know that we're all familiar with resumes and cover letters, and some of you have probably seen as many as I have. But what I really want to be this to be a sharing experience where everybody can gather new info, maybe refresh some old info that we have and share it with everyone that needs it. So to me, today is all about sharing information, okay? And that's what I want to get across for everybody. All righty? So we've got an agenda here, and you know, I have been fighting with my mouse too, so our agenda is it moving? There we go. So that's our agenda. We've got 20 different sections, and some of them will be really fast. The others, pardon me, will take a little more time to go through. But other than that, that is got a little pause and letters and things like that. And along the way, sorry, please ask any questions that you have, and we will move forward after we answer those questions. Okay?
If you wouldn't mind just making sure you put them on the chat, in the chat box.
Yeah, put them in the chat box. All right, next slide. So employment prep, what does this mean and why do I need it? So you need to prepare for a job search because every successful job searcher will tell you that looking for a full-time job is a full-time job. So you need to put in the effort to gain the reward, which is a job. So there are many steps that need to be done before you get a job. So that is why we are doing the prep work before, and then putting down the right details will be the key to your success, which is moving on to a job or a career, whichever stage you're at right now. So, and the job prep can take all day, it can take a week. If you're working with a client, it can, you know, it's not just a sit down and fill it out in 5 minutes kind of thing. You really need to put some thought into it and some detail. And I've got slides on how to get that done. So we've got the slide is the job search cycle. Hello?
Sorry.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Forgot that you can have it on your side.
What's that?
Technical difficulties. Yeah, it's on.
Okay, thanks. Okay. You know, honestly, if this doesn't turn into a blooper reel, I don't know what will. So we'll see how that goes. So so we've got the job search cycle. So maybe you've even seen this before. You could have done in different formats or something like that. The puzzle pieces are in there in the center as a metaphor, because when all the pieces are put together, then you do have your puzzle, right? So everything seems better. But in the beginning, we're at circle number 1, which is shock, denial, relief, and fear. So maybe some of you are new to job searching and you don't know where to turn or what to do. You might have gotten fired and scared, embarrassed, and afraid of what's next. Or you may have lost your job due to downsizing or a pandemic. Like, who saw a pandemic coming? I certainly didn't. So, and that's shocking. So maybe you're sick of the job you have. You don't feel like you belong there, or you don't feel challenged, or maybe you aren't getting the support that you need. You may feel like this and many, many other emotions, and that's perfectly fine. You just need to acknowledge that and accept your feelings, and then start planning to move forward from there. Don't get stuck in a rut. So number 2 is worry and fear, our second circle. You might be thinking, what am I going to do? I have bills to pay and no job. I need a break. Someone just needs to hire me. I need a job where I can move up and have some more responsibility. So whatever reason is making you feel scared, it's okay. We all feel like that, and looking for work can be scary at times. It can be very overwhelming. You know, the rejection, all that stuff. And it can wear you down, but don't worry, because there's always a hope, and there's always someone that will hire you. So there is a step 3 is a job search, where and how. So this is a big step, and it's where your plan begins. You know that you have reasons for finding a job, and now you need to make an action plan and start taking the steps to move forward. You will need to start working on your resume at this point. If you don't have a resume, you can start putting one together. Even if you have an old one from years ago, it is still a good place to start. And it doesn't matter what shape the old resume is in, as long as there's some information on there, it's perfectly fine. If you don't have anything, sometimes that's better anyway. You can just start right from scratch. So our 4th circle is stress from the job search. So job searching is time consuming. We all know that. You may still be in school. You might have homework and chores that need to be done. You might be working and looking for work in your spare time. You might be part of a family that needs your time. Maybe you're running low on money and you are getting scared. For these reasons and many, many more, it can be a stressful time. Now might be the time to take a minute to collect your thoughts. Maybe you need to take a step back and then just reevaluate where you are right now. So do you need to call some of the places you applied at? This is always a good idea, because it shows that you are taking the initiative and that you care. Do you need to refocus on where you were applying? This might be a good time to see what type of work you are looking at. Are you sounding professional when you are sending out an email with your resume attached? It is always a good idea to get a second opinion on what you are doing. Having a second set of eyes and ears on your job search might be a good thing. Getting constructive feedback can be very helpful. So then we move to the 5th circle here, barriers, giving up, why bother? And so many people feel this way, so they get overwhelmed. So just ask yourself, what is standing in my way, and how will I be able to succeed? Do I need to move to a different town or a city? Do I need to put more hours into my job search? Do I need to get different childcare? But don't give up. All of your hard work will pay off. You just need to be patient. You know, everybody has barriers in their life that they need to work through, and you can overcome them. And sometimes it just takes a little strategizing to get over those barriers and then to get on to the next step. But what you can do is you can go back to your action plan, and maybe you need to readjust it. Maybe you need to change the length of time it will take to find a job. And we all know that the job market out there is pretty tough right now. It's, you know, you really have to think and talk to people and start networking on how you can find a job, where you can find a job. So maybe you should look at taking some online classes or sign up for classes at a high school or college, you know, until the job market kind of picks up a bit. So what other options are there out there for you? You know, I often ask people when they're in this situation, what would you tell someone to do if they were in the same situation as you right now? And just be honest. You know, it's okay to change course and then get a different plan. We all change our minds. You know, you might, you know, we do it every day, right? You know, even if it's something as simple as going and making supper, you're like, no, I don't want to make that now. I'm going to make this. You know, it's okay to change your mind. And number 6 is support and networking. We all need support in our lives, every single one of us. So start making a list of who you can call to help you. What agencies are out there to help you? Just start asking and you will find the answers you are looking for. The more people that tell you you are looking for work is a win-win. And networking is just that. You start a collection of people and agencies that will assist you in your job search so you can make that exciting new change for your future. You will get leads you might not think of, and the person or people helping you will get the satisfaction from knowing that they were a positive influence in your life and they helped you succeed. And we'll discuss more about that in the action plan and goal setting part of our presentation. So number 7 here in our circle. So as you can see by what we've covered so far, job searching is something you have already acknowledged that you need to do, and you need to start the process going. But you need to get moving on your plan. So you need to start by going on internet job search sites and apply for jobs that you are not only qualified for and interested in, but you need to take the time to do it right. You need to read the application. What is the closing date? What qualifications do you need? Does it look like it would be a safe place for you to work? Are you familiar with where you are applying at? Is your resume and cover letter ready to go? Do you have references? And, you know, references are very important, and we'll discuss more about resumes and cover letters pretty short, coming up right away here. And then we've got the interview. So you did all your work, your planning paid off, you got an interview, so congratulations, you got an interview. Now what do you do? You know, maybe you've had so much rejection and now you think, oh my God, now I have an interview, I don't know what to do. So you need to start by finding some questions, and the internet is a good place for this. And just choose questions that make sense to you. You don't need to know how to explain how to assemble an engine if you aren't a mechanic. You know, if you've never been a dishwasher, clearly you can't answer questions like that. So just read through the thousands and thousands of questions out there and find some that make sense for you, and then rehearse them and find answers. Usually if you ask a family member or a friend to help you, they'll be pretty honest with you. So, and get the feedback from them and then go from there. You know, practice saying them in front of a mirror. You know, anything that helps you get your confidence up and move forward. So, and even after all of that, you still might be nervous and anxious on the day of your interview, but that's normal. Everybody gets anxious before an interview. Doesn't matter how many you've gone to, you know, but at least this way you'll be prepared. Okay, you've got some backup because you did your work. And now you've got the job. That's the final dot in our job search cycle there. You got the job, so way to go. You did it. Congratulations. You know, you're pretty excited, but then after the excitement settles down, you need to think about what happens next on the job. So what time do I need to be there? You know, ask yourself these questions. Do I have transportation? Do I have everything I need for my paperwork? So these questions and more are part of being an employed person. You know, they're all the detailed minutia of getting to the job, being on the first day on the job. So these are the 9 steps in the job search cycle. You know, you may know more of these steps and go through more steps, or only go through a few, or you may go to step 1 and then go to step 5 and then go to step 7 and then go to step 3. So this is your job search journey, or your client's job search journey, or the individual that you're supporting, it's their journey. So it'll be different for everyone. You know, this is just a cycle, it's not a plan. And if they have their action plan and things like that, they should be okay. They'll get through it. So we've got our next slide is your disability and declaring it.
Yep, good to go.
Pardon me?
You're good to go.
I am? Look, I can't see it. I can't see my slide.
You can't see yours?
No.
Should be under present.
There we go. So your disability and declaring it. So whether or not you have a disability is a personal decision. So you will hear from others to put it on your resume and others will tell you not to. It is really a personal decision. You know, there are job postings that will ask you if you have a disability. So if you feel comfortable, you can declare it at that time when you're applying for the position, because you should let them know. You know, if you do get an interview, it would be ideal to express if you have any needs or supports that are required, you know, for you to get into the building maybe, or a comfortable chair or any aids that you would need that way. So it might be a good idea at that time to let them know. And most businesses are open to hiring people with disabilities, and you cannot be discriminated because of it. So that is the law. And in Sask has more information on this on our website. Any questions so far? Pretty straightforward kind of stuff, isn't it? So we have our action plan and goal setting. And this is very important if you're helping somebody look for work. They can't just randomly think, oh, you know what? I'm just going to go out there and look for a job today. Well, that's not exactly how it works. I'm glad you've got the enthusiasm that you want to get a job. You know, you've thought about why you want to get a job. Maybe you want to buy a new coat, a car, or you need to go to school and save some money. You want some independence, whatever it is. But you really do need to be prepared. And so getting an action plan done or having a goal setting session with whomever you're working with is a good place to start, and it should be your first step in your job search. So you should make a set of goals that you want to achieve. You know, there are short-term goals anywhere from 1 to 6 months, midterm goals 6 months to 2 or 3 years, and then long-term goals 3 years and up. So short-term goal would just be to get your resume done, make sure you have a covering letter and your references are done. You know, if you set small goals for people and they achieve them, that starts building their confidence. So any small goal like that will be a good place to start. And once they have a resume and a cover letter, they're good to go. They can start moving forward in their job search goal. And midterm could be to maybe have accomplished 3 interviews by this time, or you know, you want to make sure you have a job and that you're off probation and things like that. So whatever they need to do is fine. You know, long-term goal could be maybe to finish going to trade school, university, grade 12, and then move forward from there. You know, I know we work with people starting sometimes in grade 9 and move forward. So that their long-term goal could be that, you know, to gain some independence by getting a part-time job or something like that. And we can, and just help them with that. It's all an individual. So I did give you a couple of handouts that I have used for years in one capacity or another. And the first one there is the career and goal setting plan. It's pretty straightforward. It's just, you just have the steps in the plan, the date I want to finish this step, and then check when this step is completed in notes. Like, that's just a simple Word document. It can be individualized for anybody. And you can just make one up in a few minutes with your client or whomever and move forward from there. The next one is a little more detailed. It is on the action plan and goals. And this one, I know they're not showing up that great on the screen right now, but this was meant for a PowerPoint on a large screen. So that's why the resources are pretty handy. And I appreciate Sheila sending them out to everybody. So we've got the action plan and goals there. This is another one I've used for ages. You may have even seen things similar like this if you've ever worked with Labor Market Services or CanSASC. So the goals are, what do I want to do in my life? Where do I want to be right now, 6 months, 3 years and longer? The skills and abilities, for example, computers, math, people skills, driver's licenses, certificates. Strengths, what am I good at? Barriers, you know, reliable transportation. What's in the way of getting through to your goals? and how will I achieve my goals, any people or agencies that can help me. And I put on the bottom there, I put a checklist so people understand that there are things that they need to get done for their action plan and goals. The resume, cover letter, letter of reference, transportation, action plan and goals, and then of course a portfolio. And let's see if I can get my, how come my screen's not moving? My screen is not moving. Right. I should have had a talk with this computer. Okay, so we are on to our resume development. Now I know we've talked about our action plan and things like that and moving things forward. The resume is it's a really important document to have, and it explains in 1 or 2 pages what employment goals you have, your education, your work experience, and any skills or certificates that you have. It's a short document that lets people know that you're ready to go to work and want to apply for a job. So most businesses that you apply at require a resume before they will even arrange an interview. So you need to have one. Resumes need to be done carefully as they are a depiction of what your work life is. It is not an autobiography, and it does not need to tell your whole life story. And after you've made one, you know, just keep one in a safe place. Send it to a friend, a family member, you know, keep it on a USB stick, thumb drive, and make sure you have a good copy somewhere. Print off a hard copy and save one of those as well. So our next slide is parts of a resume. I just need a little sip of water. I don't know what that was. Okay, so the heading goes at the top of the page. So this is where you put your name, address, phone number, and email. The objective, this is always kind of a tricky part. Some people will say, you know, you need one, it doesn't. But this is explain what type of work you're looking for, whether it's full-time, part-time, casual, after school, or weekends. So, you know, you might talk to someone and they'll say, well, you don't need an objective, you know. And that is true if you have enough information on your resume, then no, you don't really need one. But if you're a little light on information, then you should put in an objective, and it's a good thing because it'll help identify for yourself and to the employer exactly who you're looking for or what kind of job you're looking for. So if you can only work after school, you know, Thursdays and weekends, then be specific in your objective, then you do need one. So there's no real wrong answer for having an objective. It just depends on your information. I personally don't put one on mine. You know, and I know a lot of people that have worked for years don't. And you can go on the internet and they'll tell you, no, you need one, then you need this, and you really don't. If you do have a lot of information and you have a lot of years working behind you, you can put in what's called a skills summary at the top instead of an objective. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then the third heading are skills and abilities. And these just explain what specific skills you have, you know, a driver's license, first aid, CPR, bondable, you know, I have 3 years experience working as a server in a busy restaurant, you know, I have computer skills, time management, flexible, reliable. If you go on Labor Market Services website, you will see that on there, they've done this really great, I guess, business portfolio, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. And on there, they've asked employers across the province what they're looking for in employees. And they're looking for people with time management skills, flexible and reliable. And, you know, we can teach people how to use a computer. We can teach people to pretty much do anything if they're open-minded. But, you know, having someone show up on time for work, or being flexible and working with a lot of people, especially from diverse communities, you know, you can't teach that. So when you are flexible and open-minded, that makes you a pretty reliable employee. And they want you to be reliable as well. They want you to show up and not just come for the paycheck. They want you to be there. So having time management, flexible and reliable on your skills and ability is a really good thing.
Karen, there's a comment.
Yep.
It says identifying an objective is a good way of specifying a job you want with a company that's advertising multiple needs, roles, etc.
Yeah, for sure. You know, you can easily identify that this is a specific job. You can even put the competition number in there, or the job posting number, so they know that exactly when they're looking at the resume that, yeah, this is the job that they're applying for. So yeah, like I say, there is no right or wrong answer for that. But yeah, if you feel comfortable putting that in your objective, by all means do so. I think it's a great idea. You know, I've helped people do both. I've helped guys that are going on the rigs that, they go, no, I need an objective because I want to put that in there. And then in their objective, we put that, they've had so many years working on different equipment and things like that. So yeah, I think it's a good idea. I'm not saying it's a wrong idea, but yeah, I agree with you, to identify and point out. It can actually make your resume maybe stick out a little more too. And that's a good thing. And then we've got work experience. Your most recent work goes first, and then every job follows this one. And you need to add where you work, the dates of your employment, your job title, and then any duties that you have. And then education. Your most recent education goes first, and you need to add the name of the school you're attending or last attended, the year you graduated, what grade you achieved or are currently in, and where you graduated, what town or city you were in. And this volunteer experience. So this is unpaid work that you did for someone. I've had a lot of people say to me, I did so-and-so of this, but I didn't get paid, or I'm like, well, sure, that's volunteer work. So, but working under the table is not volunteer work. I've had people tell me that as well. So having volunteer experience on your resume shows that you take an interest in others in your spare time. Examples could be helping neighbors and friends with yard work, helping out at a school on a team, or the library, helping out in the library, the cafeteria, helping other students out at school, volunteering in dances or community events. The list goes on and on. When you're having a meeting with someone, you'll find out that most people do have a little bit of volunteering experience, and it does look good on your resume. So the last section are references. So this section always goes last on your resume. You should have 3, but if you only have 2, that's okay. They shouldn't be family unless you worked for them. And you will need to add their first and last name with the correct spelling, where they work and what their job title is, and a phone number to reach them at, a reliable phone number. If you don't have the phone number, put their email address down. If you have that, that's fine. If you can only text to that person, then just put that next to their phone number. And let's see, you need to ask for permission before you put down their information so that they know that they're going to get a call at some point to be a reference for you. You want to tell them a little bit about what you're up to, if you're still in school, I'm still in grade 11, but I'm looking for a part-time job. This is what I've been doing. I've been volunteering here. So give them a little heads up what you've been doing in case they haven't seen you for a little while. Optional headings, any special awards or honors, you can make a special section for that, or you can add it to your skills and ability section as a subsection, or just include it in it. And then a career summary, I kind of talked about that. You can put that at the top, and so it just explains what you've been up to. If you have a lot of experience as a teacher or a nurse, or if you've got experience, as a job coach or things like that, you can put that in there, or as a cook or a dishwasher. I've worked at busy restaurants. It just kind of puts it at the top and it highlights it. So you can do that as well. I've done that for a lot of people in the last little while. And or when I worked as a job coach, I mean. So I've got the breakdown of the resume is next. And the heading should always go first. I'm sorry, Marci, did you say something?
No, I think I went too far. Let's go back.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh.
Don't worry.
I'm telling you, I've been learning a lot working at home, and I begin to appreciate the IT people I worked with even more. So so a heads up to them. So we've got the heading and objective here. The heading is right there. It's just pretty basic. The handout that you received is something that I've handed out in workshops, and it just really breaks it down. And I know it's 5 or 6 pages, but when you are done typing out your resume on the computer, it's really only 2 pages, and that's how long your resume should be. At the most, you can have 3 pages just with your references on it, but employers really only want to see 1 or 2 pages. And at the top there, so you've got your heading. There is an objective on there, and I put here, again, there's a couple of examples. To obtain full-time knowledge, where I could use my knowledge, skills, and or employment experience. You know, I'm looking for employment as an admin assistant. I have 3 years experience working in a fast-paced office, a valid driver's license, and I enjoy working with people. And another one is I'm looking for part-time work after school that could turn into full-time work during the summer months. So yeah, like an objective is a good idea as well. And it's just a personal choice, and you're not going to get into trouble for using one or not using one. It really is just a personal choice. I've used it both ways. And then we've got our next one is here, skills and ability, and education or education and training. Now, skills and ability should go next after the heading or after your objective. And then I put a few examples in here. There are many, many more. And I put in here, you know, if you're bilingual, that's great. If you can speak Cree or Dene, put that in there. French, you know, shift work, valid driver's license, team player, reliable, computer skills, good at math. And make sure if you're helping somebody with their resume that they know and understand the terminology and the words that you're putting on there. When I've done resumes for people and they've worked on them in the classroom or whatever, and I've said, okay, so you put punctual on here. So what does that mean? And they go, oh, I don't know. So I say, well, it means that you show up on time. And they go, oh, okay. So they need to be able to, because you're not going to be in that interview with them, so they need to be able to explain and defend their resume. So those are a lot of skills and abilities. There's thousands of examples again on Mr. Google, so you can always go in there and get more. I have lots of them. I've got binders full of things if you ever need any extra information. And then education or education and training, it's up to you what heading you want to use. If there's extra training in there that, you know, you're helping somebody with, then that should go in there as well. Just put whatever was most recent first, and you can break it down, go education, and then put a heading as training and skills training or whatever it was, what kind of training it was. So you can put that in there as well. And it just explains, just make sure that you follow the same format of the name of the school, the location of the school, you know, the highest grade that they're in and what grade they achieved it at. And please don't use initials, because a lot of times there are so many schools, like especially in Saskatoon or Regina, that if I were to read somebody's resume and it had the initials of a school, I wouldn't understand or know what that is. So you just need to take the time to go through it and just make sure you write everything out. And that's that. And again, always put the most recent first and then work backwards. So we've got our next section is training and certificates and workshops. You know, any workshop, I've always encouraged people that if free training comes up, sign up for it. You know, even if you don't think you're going to need it, you know, take it, because if something's free and it's training, somebody else has paid for it and they put the time into getting that ready. So take it. You know, I've taken all kinds of training that, you know, I never thought I'd need. You know, I've taken mask fitting, and who knew that you'd actually need that in this day and age. So, you know, there's all kinds of training that I've taken in the past that I didn't think I'd need, and now it's kind of come in handy. And so encourage people that if training does come up, that they should take it. If they're capable of taking it and if the time and everything suits them, then they should take it. You know, so, but use only certificates that are up to date. I have a portfolio, and in there I go through there every so often, and I'll throw out all my old information and think, oh, I should take this again. You know, make sure you know how long certificates are good for. You know, first aid 3 years, but then you can recertify in the 3rd year, so you don't have to go through the 2-day thing again. And, you know, mental health first aid, how long is that good for? SAS best, things like that. So but put those on there. There are financial literacy courses that you can take. A lot of, one of the banks does that, and they do a really wonderful job. So you can put that on there, sign people up for that. There's a lot of stuff online too, and that you like to work through. And so then we've got work experience. And again, it's just keep it simple. You know, where you worked, the business you worked at, what city or town you worked at. You know, you don't need to get too hung up on the date of when you started work. I know what day I started work. It was March 17th. I remember that because it was St. Patrick's Day. But otherwise, you know, I might not remember my last job when I started the exact date, but I do know the month. It was April. So, you know, just as long as you have the month down, if you can think. And a lot of times when you're working with people, you can, if you just sit with them and start writing stuff down and they don't think, oh, you know, I don't remember when it was. And you think, okay, well, was it in the spring? Was it in the summer? They go, no, it was cold outside. So I think it was winter. So then you can kind of narrow it down to at least that section. And, but if not, then just get the year right and put it down. The example here I do have is from dishwasher from 2017 to 2019. And just a few examples of what the dishwasher did. And then a superstore summer job, use a POS machine. And it's just the summer of 2016. And that's it. So then you just put the name of the, and just keep it consistent, because that's what employers are looking for, is just consistency, something that's easy to read. And then the last is, second last, is volunteer experience. So there's lots of ways that you can get involved in volunteer, especially this, when the pandemic, we need, you know, businesses or different volunteer agencies, they need more volunteers. So it might be a time to, as long as it's safe to go there and we're all practicing safe distancing and, or social distancing, pardon me, then I think it's okay to maybe think about doing something like that. And it's good on your resume. It looks good on your resume that you've taken the initiative to do something else in your community, helping out your friends, your neighbors, you know, after school supervision, sports team, you know, helping out with that, you know, anything, you know, you just got to get thinking, brainstorm and think about maybe what you've been doing, and then just write it down and put it in there. And just where you volunteered and any work that you did, you know, if it's ongoing or what year it was and things like that. And then references, I can't stress enough how important references are. You know, you should have at least 3. Make sure the spelling is right on their name. And that, you know, you've got their permission to use them as a reference. I've had phone calls from people that have put me down for a reference, and I haven't seen them in years, and I'll go, yeah, I'm sorry, when they were in my class, I really enjoyed having them in there, but I couldn't speak for what they've been doing in the last 5 years. But other than that, you know, you can't really say a lot. So it kind of made me look a little silly, and then they look unprepared too, because they hadn't even sent me a text or sent me an email asking for permission, or at least, you know, letting me know. So it's a good idea to give your references a heads up that you're going to be looking for work, and maybe send them a text or a quick email or something, and just let them know what you're looking for and if they hear of anything. So, and again, your networking starts over again. And don't use family unless you work for them at their place of business, because you just never know what family has to say about you. You know, it could be good or it could be bad. Never know. So don't use family unless it is absolutely necessary. Right. And that's it. Don't put references available upon request. I've had employers tell me they don't like that, and the reason being that it's just, you know, you might give them a fantastic resume, and then they go, you know, you have a good interview and they want to hire you, and then they go, well, you know, where are your references? If you're not prepared to give them those references, then it kind of makes you look unprepared, and that you're like, I'll get it later, and then you have to start digging around. So just take a few minutes. The slide that I gave you it's a blank slide. I think it's coming up. It's just a handout that I have that I would give out to my clients, and I would say, well, if you don't know them, just take this, fill it out. You know, nowadays with technology being what it is, they can just put it on their phones and fill all the information in that way and just send it back to you. But you should have at least three references, 2 or 3, okay? And that's how that works. I did give you another copy of a resume, and it's 3 pages long, but once you type it out, it's only 2 pages long, just depending on your information. And that's just another template that I've used over the years with a lot of students or clients. And it's pretty straightforward, and it works. It seems to work pretty well. So any questions? Anybody? I have a little sip of water here again.
No questions on this end.
I think I'm following a different format than you.
I have a question for you, Karen.
Yes.
Hi there. Isn't it that just a potential employer can call some like a business that you have for your with your work experience as well to use as a reference? Is that something you're noticing a trend with as well?
Yeah. Like a lot of people do work experience and it's unpaid, right? And so, yeah, they can definitely call that employer and ask for a reference on that as well. And just to say, you might even know somebody who works at that place of business and say, I know Marge works there. I'm going to phone Marge and see what she knows about Stan and do it that way. So, yeah, you can for sure use a work experience. And that's a good point, too, because if you are having a work experience or doing a work experience, that needs to go on your resume, too. Not under volunteer. I would put that under work experience and training. And make sure you identify that it is a work experience that you're doing. Because I know a lot of the people that are on the webinar today, they do support people that do go through work experiences or work placements, and you need to identify that and put that on your resume as well. So thank you for pointing that out to me. I appreciate that. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, let me know.
That was great. Thank you for that explanation. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So I feel like I'm on a different PowerPoint than you guys. So the next slide, skills and abilities. That's what you've got, Marci?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Is it?
Yeah, it's just like an example of different resumes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So that's just something that I've handed out to people as well, because a lot of times if people meet in your office and it can get a little frustrating for them because you're making them it's a lot of thinking that goes into a resume. And so if they do get frustrated, you can pull out these handouts and these resources and say, I know it's been a long day so far and, you've done a lot of work, but maybe this is what you can take home with you to work on it. We can meet again next week. So that's why I have these checklists and things like that, because I know it can get overwhelming, especially if you've never done it before, and it can get tiresome and, all that thinking. And then, the stress of trying to find a job as it is. So any resources I feel that we can give to people is just a bonus for them, because that's our end goal, is to make sure that we give them our best of abilities for them to get to a job or a career. And, whether it's a part-time job, during school, after school, whatever we can do to make their life easier, I feel is our responsibility. So that's why I have all these little checklists. I've got binders full of things that I've collected or made up over the years, through years of experience, that has taught me that people need aids along the way for whatever reason. And a lot of the people that we support too, we can put a package together and send it off to their parents to help with them. And, we can turn it into a learning process, especially with school being what it is. And, it would help them along as well. So that's just what I've learned along the way in the years that I've been doing this. And yeah, we've got here. So there's our reference sheet. So there are different types of resumes out there. The first one is a chronological one, and it's the most common type of resume. It lists your work and education chronologically, which means that it starts with the most recent and then you work backwards from there. And it's preferred because it gives the best picture in the shortest amount of space or time, who you are and what you've accomplished, and it illustrates a very clear work history. And when should you use it? Well, if you want to focus on your employment history first, then use this one. Use it if you are going after a specific job and you have the work history to show for it. It would include volunteer experience and special interests that you have. And it's a very orderly depiction of your work and work history, and it's easy to read. And a lot of employers like it because they can just glance at it and they can see a direct history of exactly what you've been up to and where you've been working, and it's very specific. The next one is a functional resume, so it focuses more on your skills than your work history, and it usually includes a detailed summary of your work skills and then your work history. So, and when should you use it? If you're looking for a specific job, for example, a chef, a welder, and a carpenter, those are just examples. You would focus on the skills that you achieved while you're in your job, not in the length of time you're at your job, because maybe you've had to move around a lot. And in the last year at my previous job, I had to get my mindset around a functional resume because I ended up doing a lot for a lot of the guys and gals that would come in that were trade workers. And it was just kind of a no-nonsense kind of a resume. And it was just their work, what they did, and their references, and that's it. We would put a career summary in maybe at the top or an objective, and that was it. And it would still be 2 pages long. And it was kind of hard for me to wrap around because it didn't follow the same format. But I really got to like that kind of a resume a lot because it showed exactly what their skills were. It was a good. And then there's a combination resume. So this type of resume lets you put your skills and experience on paper and still allows you to put down your work experience chronologically. It's very flexible and it allows you to format your resume to the specific job you were applying at. And when should you use it? If you want to show a more detailed work experience history that explains who you are and what you're capable of doing, it's kind of a blend of both the chronological and functional. And a person that uses this type of resume would focus more on their work and education and not on their volunteer experience. And then we have the no work experience resume. I've used this a lot. I've used it for students or adults or older adults who don't have any work experience or very limited experience. And when you have someone that needs this resume, it's best to focus on their strengths or any volunteer experience that they may have. You will need to ask a lot of open-ended questions about what they have been doing with their time. And quite often people don't realize all the actual work that they have been doing and the many ways that they have contributed to their lives and the lives of others. So, I've been writing and rewriting and proofreading resumes for years, and I've seen thousands of resumes. And the most common form of a resume that I use is a chronological resume because it just lists everything that you need to say and it does it in an orderly fashion. And it's been my experience that most employers like this type of resume as it's easy for them to read and they can glance at it and see the information that they need to see, and it really doesn't waste their time. And so, it's up to you, but the chronological one is probably the most common one that people use. And it's good. And once you get using it, once you get people like their first resume or work on another one that they haven't had for a while, then, they've got a really good baseline for moving forward from there.
There's a comment on here just saying that breaking down the resume in sections helps individuals really understand and teaches them kind of the skills that they should be looking at in their resume.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a really good skill builder. I agree with that 100%. And it's a good confidence builder too, because along the way they may have thought, oh, I forgot I helped out in the, cleaning up, the yards and things like that where we live. And, so, you get them thinking and it gives them a sense of pride too in what they have accomplished. If they've got a really good work history, they can talk to you about that and expand more on that too. So yeah, that's a really good comment. Very good. So I do have a scenario there. So a student came into your office and they're asking for help and they've never worked before. And they have Down syndrome, they do have volunteer experience, they've helped with family and friends, and they've got some extracurricular activities, and they may have volunteered in school, helped out family and friends by babysitting. And once you sit down with people, you can start listing. It doesn't matter if they're in grade 9 or grade 10. A lot of students out there are still active in their community and they're doing a lot. So you can start listing that. It's a good place to start even in grade 9 if you're working with people like that. Maybe they participated in after school classes, drama, chess, or been a part of a sports team. They may not have been on the sports team, but they could have been an assistant helping out the team. These are really important things. They could have a babysitting course or a first aid, or maybe they're recognized as a school leader. Everybody just loves being around them, because of their academics, or they're just a really kind and helpful person. So these are good things to start working on, and the possibilities are just wide open, So you just need to compile a list of what they've been doing. And after you see it written down and they see it written down, you'll realize how much they really have accomplished, and getting a letter of reference, maybe 1 or 2 letter of reference from people that can speak for them in a kind way and how great a person they are is a good thing. So, and then attach these letters with their resumes when they do apply for work. And then just keep asking open-ended questions when you're working with them to determine that. Oops. Yeah, just ask some open-ended questions. So, get their minds working, get them thinking, and challenge them. Like, what have you been doing? Because most people will actually after you start talking to them, tell you more about themselves and what they have been doing. I've had people come in and say, well, I haven't been doing anything. And after you have a conversation with them, you determine that, no, they really have been busy, whether it was hauling wood in the community or water or shoveling walks or walking the dogs in the neighborhood. They really have been doing something, but they've just kind of just taken for granted, because that's what you do. You help people out. And once you can format that and put it on a resume, it's pretty spectacular. So it's a good thing.
So one of the great things too, just to add, one of the great things, especially for teachers or students that are in school, is that when you have your meetings and you have parents there and people from different avenues of that individual's life, that brainstorming session really helps bring out a lot of those pieces. And so, oh yeah, you did this. Oh yeah, you know, at this sporting event, you helped with this. Oh yeah, and our neighbor, and then things really start coming out. So if you get really stuck, that's a nice way of really bringing out, and even with skills and stuff on your resume too, just to have those conversations, brainstorm, work together on figuring out different pieces that you can add to the resume. That really helps.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of sporting events do need volunteers and things like that. That is a good point. Powwows, there's all these cultural things that people attend, and those are really great things, and that can be put down on your resume as well. So for sure. And brainstorming, we all know that's a great place to start too, right? So that's how in our action plan and goal setting, if we have the list of names that we can go to that, and you don't just need to ask one person, you can ask 5 people or 6 people, and you can format ideas from that as well. So
there's another question
Sure.
here. Could a letter of reference also be a person that is used in the reference section of the resume, or should they be a different person?
Oh no, it can totally be that same person for sure. And that might actually even save them time when the person is doing the interview process, following up to phone the references. So no, I think that's a really good idea. And that would help a lot. I do like letters of reference. I have written quite a few of them for different students, or for a friend of mine that was getting her MBA. And, they're a good thing to have. I have letters of reference from people that I keep on hand as well. And I think they're good. There's not a bad thing about them. And it's always nice when you do have those letters of reference, especially if somebody is a little light on information. And it really, when you get a letter of reference from somebody and you see how nice it is, and you just think, oh my god, like it's another self-esteem building tool that we use for people. So it just is a really good thing. It's a good thing. So that was a good point and a good question. Thank you forever.
I find a lot of people have a hard time talking about themselves and coming up with stuff about themselves. I mean, we all really kind of find that uncomfortable. So that's a nice point that you said there, Karen, with the, it's a confidence building, because you need confidence going into an interview or into, any scenario that you're going into. So I like your point. That's an awesome point.
Thank you. Thank you. We're all in this together, right?
That's right.
So for the second scenario, I added this because many times parents don't understand or give themselves enough recognition for what they have been doing. And this not only applies to women, but it also applies to men. But for this scenario, we're going to use a woman as an example. And so this woman, she walks into your office. She could be a mom to one of your students or clients, and you're the person that she knows that you've helped her out. You've helped out her children maybe in the past, and she knows that she can trust you and she can go to you. So she wants to go back into the workforce, but has been out of the loop for years because she was at home raising 3 kids and running a busy household. And now that all the kids are moving out or moving on, she really wants to go back out there and start a job. And she knows she'll have to start at the bottom and work her way up, and she's okay with that. So again, you just start by asking her open-ended questions. What did you do with the family budget? How did you manage that? Who helped you with the grocery shopping? Did you do it all? Stay-at-home moms and dads, they do a lot of time management, a lot of business management, a lot of accounting, so they have all those skills, and you can build around that. Managing a household budget can be extremely stressful, and doing that and managing that with children and going to, doctor visits or going to school plays and, this and that, sports, it can get pretty hectic. And so that's where time management. So you can work that into a pretty decent resume and something that they can be proud of. And so the skills, you'd start a list, and it can go on their skills summary on their resume or put it in their objective. But I've had people come into my either the classroom or whatever, and they almost feel ashamed because that's what they've been doing. And like, my goodness, like, it's a tough job. So they should be proud of it. And so hopefully when you work through with somebody like that, you can give them that sense of pride back, because it's a tough job being a stay-at-home mom or dad, and they should be recognized for that. And give them the opportunity. Like, who knows, along the way, they might have even taken first aid or first aid mental health or things like that, or volunteered in the community, at school, at church, or whatever. And that can all go down on there. So it's a good thing. You can always help somebody in a positive way, even if they have been out of the job market for many years. It's okay. You can help them with that. If they have been out of the job for a few years and haven't done anything, if they do go to an interview, they will need to defend that gap in their resumes. So they need to be prepared for that when they do go to an interview, what they have been doing. And so they will need to get an answer, because as many of you know that you've seen resumes, you know that if somebody has a gap, maybe they forgot to put that information on the resume, or maybe they weren't doing anything, maybe they were ill, maybe they were out of the country. We don't know, right? So until you ask questions and get into that, you need to have that person that's going for that interview or out there applying for jobs to be able to fill in that gap. And that's part of our job, is to get them prepared to answer those questions and be comfortable when they do get to an interview to answer those kind of questions.
Karen, can I ask you,
Yep.
One of the things you have on here is ask an open-ended question. Can you give an example to individuals about what that looks like, or what an open-ended question would be?
Sure. Like, an open-ended question is anything that doesn't require a yes or no answer. So if I were to ask you, what color is my laptop, and you said black, then we're done, right? That's the only answer you can give me. But an open-ended question would be something. So can you please tell me how you spent your time after school? And so they go, well, I was walking the dog in the neighborhood. I helped out at the library because I put books away, and I made sure they were all checked in. and I belong to a study group after class. So those are open-ended questions. It's an open-ended question is any kind of a question that gets more than a yes or no answer. And so it just elaborates. It's like if a friend of yours went on a holiday to Mexico and you say, hey, I heard you just got back from Mexico. Tell me all about it. Well, that's an open-ended question because they go, oh yeah, we went on a cruise and we went and, we're in the ocean and went fishing and this and that. And so they just elaborate, right? So those are open-ended questions. Does that help?
Yep.
And people like to talk about themselves. And if once you get them started, sometimes it's hard to shut them off, right? So, and that's okay. That's okay, because then you just keep writing and you just keep writing, and the more information they give you, the better it is, and their resume will turn out better in the end. So I made up this resume helpful reminder, kind of a list. I tried not to make it sound negative, and I hope it doesn't, because after seeing hundreds or thousands of resumes over the years, I really have seen a lot of different formats and things like that. So this is kind of my years of experience of what not to do. So don't put a border around your resume. You don't need one. It doesn't look good. And if you go in there to change the format again, it can get a little tricky if you want to keep within the borders. And so you don't need to number your resume pages. You're only going to have 1 or 2 pages anyway, 3 at the very, very most. Don't use any color except for black for your font. And don't use a fancy font. Just keep it simple, Calibri, Arial, New Times Roman, something like that. Something simple that people can read and doesn't look fussy or fancy. Don't put borders around your headings. If you've got an objective, don't put a border around it. You can underline it and bold it. Put the font a little bigger, put it at 16 or something, but you don't need a fancy border around it. Let's see, don't use colored paper. Just don't. It just, you don't need pink paper, blue paper. If you think that's going to help you stand out, it really doesn't. It just don't do it. Just use nice white paper and then that's it. Let's see, don't use an email address that is not professional or tasteful. I had this guy in my class. He is a great guy, but his email address was, Tricky Ricky. And I said, oh, my friend, I said, you're going to have to change that. He said, no, I want to keep that. And I said, well, that's fine. And so what we did was we set up another email address for him where he got, anything related to school or work was sent directly to that email address. And he could still have his own personal email address, but he just had a professional sounding one at the end. So it was just, I forget what his last name, I think. And so he just used his first name, his last initial @gmail.com, and that was it. And so then he knew that if he saw emails coming to his professional one, then he needed to respond to that right away. And so that's just an easy fix for something like that, especially if somebody doesn't want to change their email address.
Can I comment on that too?
Yep.
I've just noticed what some of the individuals that have come to us who have created an email address in school can't remember their password. And so it would be really good to record that and give that to them, in a profile or something, so that they have that information later on, because there's a lot of people that are getting references or getting calls for jobs, and they can't open the email to even see who sent them. So it would be a good idea if everyone has their password. Sounds fun.
Yeah. And nowadays you need a password for your work computer, your home computer. You need one for your phone. You need one for your tablet. You need one for sometimes for your TV. So and for the bank and for this. So we're inundated with different passwords all the time. And what I used to do with clients was, in my last job, I would get them to write their password down, seal it in an envelope, and keep it in their file. And then it was always there. So if they ever needed it, as long as it was during work hours, they could come in and get the envelope and look inside for their password. I never saw it, and it was just in their file, and that was it. And so I've used that. I found that to be pretty successful. But I know it does get overwhelming with all the passwords we're inundated with these days. And even I have a hard time, even if you set up a government account or something like that, you need a password for that. So, if you stop and think about it, we all probably have 10 or 12 different passwords going at the same time. So, you know, it's a good idea to have that written down or sent somewhere or put it in your portfolio or something like that where you can have a safe copy of that. And please don't share your passwords.
There's
Please
a couple questions, if you don't mind me just.
No, go
There's
ahead.
one that asks, is there any professional email address that doesn't involve names for confidentiality purposes?
That doesn't involve names. Well, you could put if you didn't want to put your own personal name down, you could put a city name down or a town name down. So, you know, like Toronto@gmail.com or something like that. So no, you don't necessarily, I don't believe, have to put your own name down. I could be wrong on that, but you could, if anybody knows any differently, I'd appreciate knowing that. But, you know, you could, I have one of my email addresses is not a name. Or is it? No, my password isn't. So, you know, I don't think you need to have your name on there, but you can always look for one. I don't know how Gmail works. I think Gmail is the most common one, or Outlook. So, but
You
I'm
could
pretty
use your initials.
well. You could use your initials or
Or
use
just
the
your first
initials of your mom or dad or something like that. But
How about
yeah,
the agency's name? It depends on where you work, but some people frequently change agencies.
that sounds like Aiden. Is that Aiden?
Yeah.
Yes,
Hey,
it is.
hello, Aiden. Hi. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. So I know people do change if they move to a different city or something like that, then yeah, that can change. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Aiden. So I know emails are fussy. Yeah.
There's another question here. It's
Yep.
kind of off of this subject,
Yep.
but it's a good one to ask. When listing certificates and courses, how long is considered too long ago? Should you list a course you took 5 years ago? And I know it should be relevant to job, but some people want to list everything.
Well, you know, I've got okay, take my own resume, for example. I have training that I took in 2002 because it was train the trainer. And so that's on my resume. So that's what, 18 years ago now. So that's relevant to a lot of the positions I've had over the last year, especially instructing and things like that. So yes, I do have that on there. I do have on there, you know, I'm a food and beverage instructor and things like that. So along the way, it's okay because those are significant things that we've trained ourselves for and gone to and done things like that for. When it comes to certificates, you do need to be very careful with them and make sure they aren't expired. What I have told my clients in my last job was we've made photocopies of them, usually a color photocopy, and attach that with their resume. And when it gets emailed off, we send that with it as well, because it saves the employer time. They can see that, oh yes, their first aid is up to date, their WMIS is up to date, and it's on there. So you do need to be very careful with that. When it comes to training and workshops, you know, if you took mental health training 5 years ago, that's still relevant today. It's probably even more relevant today than it was back then. So I really don't, and I think sometimes that on a resume, even if it isn't job related, and it's something like, say you took a photography course and that's on there, that shows an interest. So to me, that just shows a different part of a person if I'm looking at their resume. So I don't think it's a bad thing. If it's something that's completely out of date, then, you know, yeah, I wouldn't put it on there at all. I've taken workshops on working with gangs and things like that because of my past jobs that I worked at. And that I don't put on my resume anymore because it is not completely relevant to anything that I do right now. So that I've taken off. So it isn't on there. You can have 2 different resumes, and you can have one that has, you know, all that on there, and then you can have another one that doesn't. So you can customize your resumes for whichever job you're applying for. So that's another really good question. Thank you for that. And thank you for your input, Aiden. So let's see. Yeah, ask questions. It doesn't matter if it's related to the topic we're talking about right now. Anything goes, right? So make sure you, oh yeah, you don't need to put your name on every page. Just stop doing that. It only needs to be put on the first page, and that's it. Check for all spelling and grammar mistakes. Use spell check, but then go through it again. There are so many, if there are teachers on here, I know that you're very good at checking grammar. That's what I was concerned about doing the webinar today, because I'm like, oh my goodness, there's going to be teachers on here. I better make sure all my grammar is okay. So I hope it is. So, because it's a professional thing, right? So make sure that you do read it over again. Get somebody else to read it over. I've had people read my resume and say, you know, does anything need to be changed? And if something does, you know, I take that critique and I take that to heart, and then I will change it, because it's good to have another opinion on that. Don't leave off information, important information about your work, volunteering, school, or certificates. Don't use abbreviations. You know, unless it's like for something like WMIS or first aid, then that's fine. That's pretty universal. Don't think you need one type of resume. If you are a cook and welder, you can have 2 different types of resume, one for each. And don't make it longer than 2 pages, 3 pages at the very, very most, if you're just going to put your references on that 3rd page. Don't leave out any information about your references. And this is probably the most important thing. Don't include any personal information on your resume. Your birth date, number of children, whether you are married or common law, any banking information, your SIN number, your driver's license. You know, don't use any information that somebody can use to defraud you. When you get a job and you go through that interview and they say, you know, we want to hire you, now we're going to need that information, that's the time to give it to your potential employer. And that's the only time. They don't need your SIN number, they don't need your driver's license, they don't need your health card number. They just absolutely don't. So don't give that to them. That's so very important in today's day and age when fraud is rampant. You know, you need to be very careful about that. So, and please don't be irresponsible, you know, on social media. You know, potential employers will search those sites, and, you know, it seems like you can't hide anything nowadays on the internet. And again, I've told clients, you know, if you want to have a separate Facebook page for just you and your friends, that's fine. But be very, very careful, because they can get checked. And you want to be very careful about what you put on there and be responsible all the time. You know, I have a Facebook page and all I put on there are, you know, just silly jokes and recipes usually. So that's about it. And there's nothing harmful or anything indicative of any way that would misrepresent myself or the company that I work for. So you don't need to list every job you've ever had in your whole life. You don't need to go back 20 years. You know, unless you can summarize it and then do it, then that's fine. Don't use the template you found online and then copy and paste everything in there. I have gone through this many, many times with people. They use a template, and then when they go in to change their information, they, you know, the format is out, it's misaligned, you know, they can't find that font anymore, it's, you know, and things like that. So just start over and just use a plain Word document and start at the top and work your way through. That's all you need. You just need that information on there to look presentable and professional. You know, bold the headings, and just make that in a 14 font, and then keep everything at an 11 or 12 font for the rest of the information. And that's about it. We've talked about don't use references available upon request. You should have references. You really should. But you should do this. You should proofread it and get somebody else to proofread it for you, and tell the truth, because if there's even a little bit of a fib or a wave in your resume, if a skilled employer is out there and they're reading that, they will be able to see that, and they will call you on that. And be prepared to answer all the questions on your resume, and just ask for help. Always ask for help. There are lots of people around that want to help, and that is a good thing. So what do we got next here?
There's a comment.
Sure.
It says Grammarly is very helpful for spell check and as well as grammar check.
Grammarly?
Yeah.
Is that Grammerly?
Grammarly.
Okay, right on. See, there's a good tip.
We like tips and tools.
I love, oh my goodness. Yes, what Marci is doing, by the way, she's collecting all these tips and tools along the way, especially from the other presentations that we've had, and the future presentation that's next week on transition planning, which I encourage you all to sign up for. She's collecting all these, and she's putting, I think you're putting a document together, aren't you, Marci?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's pretty cool. And so and then that'll be on our webpage, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we're going to put it up too.
Yeah.
It'll be kind of like a Q&A thing, like some of the questions or some of the responses that we got.
Cool. Yeah, I encourage you guys to next week, if you aren't already signed up, sign up for that transition. That's going to be a really good one as well. So what is a cover letter, and do I need one? Yes, you do need a cover letter. So a cover letter is just a brief one-page letter of introduction as to why you think you are qualified for the job that you are applying for. It is typically included with your resume when you're applying for work, and you only need a cover letter if one is requested on the job posting. But it's a really good idea to have one written up and saved somewhere, whether on a thumb drive or email to yourself or somewhere else. You should have one, and then you can just go in and change it. And then the parts of the cover letter, I've had people go into a panic over writing a cover letter, and I completely understand their anxiety to it, because if it's an unknown, then it is, again, it's a scary thing to do. But if you just have a template, that template I gave you, that kind of breaks it down, how many spaces to do. I've also handed this out to different students and clients as well, and they can sit at the computer and they can do it, and then you're still there to assist them, or they can do it at home with their parents or a sibling or something like that. But it just kind of breaks it down, and it's just pretty simple. Again, it's 9 little sections, 9 little parts. It's the heading, your name, address, phone number, and email, where you are applying at. So you need to put the business name, address, and phone number down, email address if you have it, the date you're sending your cover letter, any greetings. So that's who you're sending your resume to. If you know the name of the person you're sending to, that's a bonus. If not, just address it to the human resource department. An opening paragraph. This states the job you're applying for and the job posting or the competition number. A lot of times when you're applying for a job, if you don't have that job posting number or the competition number on there, they won't even consider your application. So that job posting or competition number, I can't tell you how important that is. It needs to go in there, and even included in your email if you're sending an email away. That's very important. The body of the letter explains why you feel you are qualified for the job, what certificates you have, any schooling skills and abilities or other accomplishments. And you can just follow the job posting description to make sure you've included everything there that they're asking for in there. So the cover letter is a very important document to have. The closing paragraph, thank them for their time and that you look forward to hearing from them, and sincerely, then sign or type your name. And that is pretty much it. But make sure, again, that you've got somebody that can spell check, or go on this Grammarly. I'm going to look into that after. And check it out. Make sure all your grammar, your punctuation is all correct. Make sure, and very important too, is that when you're addressing the cover letter, make sure the name of the business is spelled properly, because they will notice that right away. So that cover letter example that I sent out to you, the steps are on there. It tells you how many spaces to put in there. I found this to be pretty helpful. For people, they can just sit there and work on it their own. It gives them a sense of independence as well. If you give them a document like this and they work on it by themselves, and then they show it to you to use for you to go through. And it's a pretty good little example. I've used that for years. Pretty straightforward. And any of the resources that I've given you, you're more than welcome to adapt them to your own needs and to your clients or the people that you're supporting. That's what it's all about, is just sharing and making sure that the information that they get is the best for them at all times. So the letter of reference, we've kind of talked about this before. I'll just briefly go through that. So it's written by someone that knows your character and work habits. It's someone that was a former boss, teacher, or close friend. It can be an elder or someone from the community that is able to speak highly and truthfully about who you are. So you should have at least 1 or 2 available to use at all times. And I like the tip that one of our webinar people said, can you attach it with your resume? Absolutely. I think that's a brilliant idea. It should go with your resume. And if it's one of your references, that's brilliant. So, it's just more backup for what kind of a person you are. So that's basically what it is. And most people that you ask to write a letter of reference, it's kind of an honor. So they will do a pretty good job. I found the ones that I've seen over the years, and they're pretty proud of you usually, and it's just a really nice honor for them to do it. But you just need to I found that you need to keep kind of on them to make sure it's done. So it's it isn't a crucial part of your job search, but it really is a nice little perk to hand there because, you know, a letter of reference seems to have gone to the wayside. I don't know if people think it's old-fashioned or something like that, but it really is a supportive document suggesting who you are and explaining who you are as a person and your work habits. So I find that to be very, very helpful. I've put an example of one that I actually wrote for a former student of mine. That's not her real name. And I was able to speak highly of Ashley, and that was an easy letter to write because she was an exceptional student. She was always on time. She was always helping people out. I could have gone on for a while, but, you know, I just kept it nice and brief. And she was hired. I don't think it's due to my letter of reference, but certainly it was a supporting document that came true for her because she was a really wonderful student and an employee. I believe she's still working in those, 3 years ago? So yeah. So that's it. That's just, I've used this template over and over again when I've had to write for other students, just change when I've known them and how I've known them. And yep.
There's a comment here, and it's in regards to the cover letter.
Sure.
It says, as lots of people don't handwrite, is it okay to print the name or just leave the typed version at the very bottom of their name?
Yeah, you can, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, not a problem there at all. Yeah, in this day and age, if you've got a digital signature, that's perfectly okay, you know, because you're sending that out with your resume as it is. So yeah, that's fine. People understand that. It's actually pretty cool if you can do that. So yeah, that's not a problem. Another good question. So what is a portfolio? And do you need one? Well, a portfolio is just a collection of your certificates, letters of reference, graduation certificates. It's anything of value that you want to accompany your resume. It can be a thin binder or something that helps keep your papers organized. You should have one because you can keep all of your important papers safe. I have one. Like, this is mine. It's just a plastic one of these, you know, just from the dollar store where I keep everything, my mental health, first aid, things like that. And I go through there. It's probably due for a time for me to go through there again. I just go through it and throw out all the expired certificates that I have. Maybe think about getting more, you know, which ones would be good for the job I have right now. So I might think of signing up for different certificates for that. But that's all it is. There's nothing extravagant or expensive about my portfolio at all. You know, I know a lot of people, they'll have an old shoebox, they put stuff in there. It's got to be someplace where you can keep your papers safe and photocopy them in color and save it on a USB stick and send them with your resume if they pertain to the job that you're applying for.
This would be really great at school when we talked about even like the passwords, losing passwords or not remembering your passwords, or even just other documentation, because a lot of students that come to us after high school, they don't have their resume or some of those pieces that they need. And so we're kind of starting fresh and new. And so I think it's really important to have something that's built up and has all your tools in it. And I like the idea of having your certificates and your reference letters, and you can keep that all together. A lot of individuals also don't kind of think about keeping everything together. And then when you're looking for those pieces, they've lost one or you can't find it. So I like the idea of having a portfolio. I think that's really, really helpful.
Yeah, I too. What we did in class was we would turn it into a class project. So we'd get an old shoebox or, you know, an orange box or, you know, something like that, just a small box, and have them decorated with sequins or pictures of their children or a hockey team or a baseball team or whatever. And so they would decorate these boxes up and put their name on it. And so they would keep all their certificates in there. And then when they left at the end of the program, they had this really cool box. They decorated themselves. And I'm sure a lot of them probably still have it because they really stand out. You know, they had feathers and honestly, it was just great. It had beading on it. Like, so they would do a really great job on it. And it was an individual project. You know, you can sit at the table and do that with your kids or grandkids or nieces or nephews or whatever. And then they have this one box that's theirs, completely theirs. They're responsible for it, and they keep all of their documents in there. And it comes in pretty handy. Any precious documents that they have or anything like that. So yeah, it is a good thing. I found it to be helpful for a lot of people over the years.
And I think to have everything all together too, that brings that confidence piece out too, because you can see more about yourself, what you have. You take pride in it. And I like the idea of like having something fancy too, because I think a lot of students don't often, or a lot of individuals don't often see the job process as something positive. And so to make it something positive, into something positive like that, and have a nice place where you can keep this stuff, even if it's a portfolio and you decorate the portfolio, I think that also brings that responsibility to them as well in looking into things and doing things in that independence piece.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, it does give them some independence. And yeah, and it's just a nice place for them to have, and they could show it off. Look what I did, right? So yeah, it's a good thing.
There's a couple questions here too in comment.
Sure.
One is, do you think an attached letter of reference would give you a stronger opportunity of being screened in for an interview?
Well, I wish I could say yes to that. I really do. I feel like it's more of a supporting document for the resume. And I do feel that maybe they might take a second look at it and go, wow, this person took some extra time and effort into doing this. Because like I say, they're not really around that much anymore. And I find that anything we can do, especially in this day and age, to give ourselves an edge up, make ourselves stand out, I think it's a good thing. So I don't think it's a wrong thing to put it on there by any stretch of the imagination. Would you get a better opportunity from that? Who's to say? If somebody were to send me something that had a letter of reference attached to it, that would mean a lot to me. If I was going through a lot of resumes, because a lot of times the people will get resumes and they're all the basic chronological blah 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 like this. And I like the idea that attaching a letter of reference, attaching your certificates with that makes you stand out a little bit more. And I think that is a very good thing to do. So
yeah, I think it is, but it really depends on who's receiving the resume and what they're looking for, right?
Yeah.
But I do think, I agree with you. If I get a lot of resumes for job coaches, and when I'm looking, I want to see who that person is, and if someone is willing to vouch for that person, that's a plus in my books, because not everybody has really great relationships with all of the employers that they've had, and so to have someone vouch for you, that's wonderful. That's such a positive thing.
I agree. And I think that we should focus on maybe getting some letters of reference. And, it's a good way if you're working with students or something, then, it's a good way for them to practice their literacy skills, their time management skills, if they are their speaking skills, it increases their self-esteem because they have to actually ask somebody for that letter of reference, right? And that can, it can be anxious saying, oh my goodness, and then they get it back and they think, wow, this is pretty spectacular what they said about me. And I think it's a good thing. I think it's a win-win for everybody if they do have it. So thank you for that question.
There is another comment, and then I have a little question for you too,
Sure.
just to add. PDF has a fill feature that allows you to insert your signature and sign in the forms, like your signature on the forms, which is a great tip and tool for everybody. I was going to also add to that, what is your perspective on having a PDF or a Word version that you send out to people when it comes to a resume?
For their resume?
Yeah.
I've never sent out a PDF resume. A lot of times, people that are getting resumes, they don't have time to change anything anyway. It might be a good idea to do that with your certificates and your letter of reference. Save it in a PDF document. That might be a good thing. PDF documents, once they're saved like that with a resume, if you don't have those computer skills to revert it back to a Word document, that can be a little tricky. So I've never done that with a resume.
And then I have a couple more questions here for you. What is the best timeline to follow up with a business after you have sent a resume?
It's a really good question. Yeah. And we're kind of going to go into that later, but that's fine. We'll bring it up now. I think any time is a good time to ask a question. So you've applied for the job. You've busy. If the closing date, if you've applied, say today is the 18th. So the closing day, you've applied, is Thursday the 18th. The closing date is the 25th. And that's next week. And it's now coming on to the week after. And you're thinking, well, I wonder what's going on. You can call in after the closing date of the particular job posting is a good idea. Either phone, drop into the business. Sometimes phoning is an anonymous kind of a way to do it, especially if you're a little anxious, about talking to people, but it is a good way to build up your confidence again and your self-esteem. So with that, I usually tell people when the closing date is done, within a day or two after that. And if you haven't received an offer of a interview, then you'll know at that time, and you can proceed on, because quite often, when people are out there job searching, they have their heart set on, I have to have this job. I'm not going to move from that, and like we've been saying today, it's okay to change your plan, move on, apply. And so if you do call and ask about if they've received your application, if what's going on with it and things like that, then you can, if they're moving forward with you, that's great. If not, then that you can move forward and go and do that. And I think that when you do follow up, it shows that you do care and you are taking the initiative in your job search and you are taking it seriously.
Okay, and there's another comment here. I like using Google Docs, and then I can access my documents from any computer. Then I don't have to worry about remembering my thumb drive.
There you
There's
go.
another tip. And then another one says you can also use Microsoft OneDrive or the iCloud to access documents anywhere.
Nice. I just started using Google Docs, and I find that to be like, it's all in there, and it doesn't matter if I'm on my laptop or my work laptop. It's just everything's there. So yeah, I agree. I've never used a Microsoft Doc one, I don't think, but I'm going to check that out too. I'm learning more from this. I think that this is great. So these tips that we're getting, I find are being very, very useful. So thank you for them. And yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
There's one last one here too. Downloading all files converter would work for all documents.
Downloading an all files converter?
Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. You see, this is why I miss my IT department. Like I do. Like, you guys are just great. I really appreciate this. You're going to help me do my job better in the future. And that is just one of the best outcomes from this webinar. So I really do appreciate that. And I'm very sincere in that. I appreciate that. So we do have a slide here. Oh, I did include a little bit of a blurb on what to say when you do send your resume away through an email. Just keep it nice and simple. Good afternoon, please accept my resume and covering letter as an application for employment with your company. And it just goes on a little bit to explain out who you are again. And thank you for your time. And John Smith, we always need to remember to be very, very polite. And again, spell check. Now that we've got some of these great tips along the way, how we can do that, just keep doing that, and the grammar. And then don't forget to attach your resume and your cover letter, because quite often you go, send it away and you forgot to send it again. That's okay if you do forget. So, but double check it.
One thing too, I should mention, saving your documents, make sure your saved document is named something appropriate.
That's a good, yes. Oh my goodness, that's a good tip. Yes. Yeah, just keep it professional. So when I've sent you a document, that's how it's been saved. So it's not some goofy thing. So I do have other things, but you have to make sure along the way that you do need to keep it professional at all times. That's why it's nice to have a separate folder for everything on your laptop or computer, and just keep everything nice and separate in there, and with a decent professional name. That's a good point there, Miss Marci.
Another trick too is to make sure you have your document, the right document attached. Open up your document first, like attach it to your email and open it up and look at it and make sure it's the right one.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You do not want to send the wrong one.
Yeah. No, you don't. That's why, You know, I think you guys got the one of the resources attaching a document or a resume in an email. And so I put that in there. And again, because I was working with clients that were working on their own computers, and so I could give this to them and they could do it. Of course, I went through it. And yeah, absolutely. Click on that attachment and make sure it's the right one, and then close it out. And because you don't want to send them a duplicate, and you don't want to make sure that if you are sending your resume with your certificates and things like that attached, you want to make sure that they're all there. So you're just double checking again. And after a while, everything, all the tips and everything like that, it just becomes routine. And so it's just automatic. And I know we're going through it a lot today, but you know, it just becomes automatic in your job search. So yeah. And we've got here, keeping track of where you applied. Is that the next one you have, Miss Marci?
Yep.
Okay, good. So keeping track of where you apply for work, you know, it keeps you organized. It shows your interest in what your goals are and that you plan to succeed. You can make a document in Word, or you can use a sheet of paper. You know, it doesn't really matter. Just have something, right? It could be the following headings or others that you want to add to it. You know, the document that I just made up in a few minutes. And it's where you applied, the date you applied, how did you send it, email or online, the contact name of the person you sent it to, if you had one or if you know it, and any follow-up. Did you call to see if they received your resume? Has a decision been made on the job? So, you know, these are questions, and it falls back to the person that asked the question. You know, yeah, you know, you should always follow up, because it's nerve-wracking waiting for a job. You know, did I get the job? It doesn't matter if it's a job at Dairy Queen or A&W, or if it's a government job. You know, it's that same amount of stress that we all through, and in the back of our mind, it's always there. So following up is just a really good thing to do.
It also shows people that you want the job. Like, it's not just another job you're applying for. You're actually wanting that job.
Yeah, like we don't want to harass them, but we do want to appear interested, right? So yeah, it's a good thing. I'm beginning to sound like Martha Stewart. I gotta stop doing that. I didn't realize that until today. Okay, so we've got a job search tracking sheet here. And again, that's just a tracking sheet I just made up. It did have all 4 lines on it, but whatever reason it doesn't now. So that's all it is. It's just a yes or no kind of a thing.
It's really important for this too, especially if people are making phone calls on your behalf, you know, to talk about supports that are offered or something like that. This is really important to know where you went back to.
Yeah, and this is another document that you can keep in your portfolio. And, you know, I've seen people go out and they buy very expensive leather portfolios, and it's all like this. But, you know, you can do that if you want to, if you have the money for that. But the dollar store is just a fine place to pick up an envelope. It can be just an old manila envelope, you know, or a file folder. But it's just something that you can keep everything in, right? You want it to be closed. So, yeah. And this job search tracking sheet, you can change it, you can modify it, you can do whatever you like. But again, it's just something that gives them the accountability too, because if you're working with somebody and they say, you know, I've been looking for work, and you know, I've applied at all these places, and then you say to them, well, where's that job search tracking sheet that I gave you? And you go, oh, well, I haven't really done anything with it, you know. And then you go through and you go, well, you applied at these 3 places, did you call them? And so it puts the responsibility back on them too as well, right? It gives them some accountability. And then they can maybe see that, oh, this is a serious kind of a thing. So it's a good thing. It's another good tool. Honestly, Martha, it's another good thing to do. Honestly. Okay, so you've got an interview. And so here we go. So if you received an email telling you that you got an interview, you need to reply back to them pretty quick, because they need to set time and schedule, and it just shows respect for them. And so do that. Find some interview questions. There are thousands of them on the internet, and just go through them, because there's a lot of goofy interview questions as well. I've got interview books back here that I've made up throughout the years and separated them into different categories, and just keep rehearsing them. I've got mine based on skills-based questions and behavioral questions and then situations. So skill-based are how you deal with tools, technology, industry standards, something like that, like how would you use a dishwasher? Explain to me how you use a POS machine. You know, how did you use the floor polisher? Explain to me how you use the scanner for scanning books into a library. So, you know, those are skills-based questions. And then they have behavioral questions. So these kind of questions, they show a candidate's aptitude and their approach to a task. It's based on past experience. They're useful for revealing soft skills like trustworthiness, attitude, and work ethic. And they explain how you handle conflict with someone. You know, if you said to them, I've been asked this before in an interview, explain how you handled conflict with someone that you used to work with. They're just doing that to see if you lost your temper, if you maybe walked out on them, you threw something, or how did you handle that? Did you handle it as a responsible person, or did you lose your temper? They have, again, situational questions are kind of the same thing. It gives you a chance to see how a candidate would react to a specific situation. They give you a sneak peek into a candidate's instincts, reaction, and decision-making abilities. You know, explain how you deal with a difficult customer. Anybody that's ever worked in retail or worked with the public knows that, you know, there are days when customers will come into your life that their whole point that day is just to make your life miserable. So how did you deal with that? You know, you can't take it personally. You know, you don't know what's going on in that person's life. So they're looking at how you maybe answered that, dealt with that situation. Again, I do have some interview questions on here. Tell me about yourself. That's a pretty standard interview question. Just explain who you are briefly. You don't need to go into your life history. What did you like about your last job? What did you not like about your last job? These are questions where they want to see, like question 3, if you were asked what did you not like about your last job? You go, I hated my boss. Like, oh my God, he was just terrible. Well, you know, then all of a sudden you've given them the mindset like, oh, I'm going to be your boss. No, you know, what are you going to think about me, right? So you have to be careful and be prepared. So that's just rehearsing. And what are your strengths? You know, what are you good at? What are your weaknesses? So, you know, you just pick a theoretical weakness and then transform it from a flaw into a strength and just work on it that way. You know, a lot of people, you know, you could say, you know, my time management skills are, you know, I could work on them to be better because I get so into what I'm doing at work that I just want to do my best job for you. If you were my boss, I would just want to do my best job for you, but I'm trying to focus more on getting things done within a set frame of time. So it's a weakness that you turn into kind of a positive thing because then your boss thinks, oh, this person really wants to work hard for me and I can count on them to do that. And so why should we hire you? I found that's a terrible question. You know, just everybody answers it the same way. Well, because, you know, I'm a good person, I will show up for work. So, you know, you don't get any really creative answers from that. So they just need to just stop asking that question. So a better question is, what do you feel we should know about you now that we haven't discussed? And that gives them a little bit more time because maybe they go, oh, you know what? I forgot. I won an award, you know, or I got best in math, or, you know, just it gives them a little bit of a time to focus more on maybe what they throughout the interview. Maybe they got a little nervous or caught up in the questions that they didn't get an opportunity to say. So it is a better question. And tell me about a time that you disagreed with the position. What did you do or say? And tell me about how other people would describe you. That's a good question because it goes back to a point that somebody made today that it is hard for us to talk about ourselves in a positive way, and this gives you an opportunity to do that. And what questions do you have for me? You know, questions could be like, you know, how are you going to let me know if I've got the job? By email, by phone, you know, so you can expect that. You know, when will you know? Things like that. So it is a good idea to ask questions.
I think, if you don't mind me mentioning something,
yeah.
Talking to someone about how to change their mindset when they're in that interview. So instead of freaking out, what can I do? What types of things can I do to calm down and understand what they're asking me? So rephrasing the question, taking a deep breath, work on some of those things too.
Yeah, and it's okay when you get to an interview. If you didn't understand the question, you can ask them, I'm sorry, I didn't understand how you were asking that question. Can you rephrase that? And most interviewers will be happy to do it for you because some of the questions that they will ask are very long. And that's why I kind of like short and sweet questions, or you could break it down, right? And take a deep breath, take a drink of water, you know, and if you're prepared ahead of time, like really prepared, and you go through these questions and you've rehearsed them and you've taken that positive feedback you've gotten from people on that, or the critiquing, positive critiquing, that you can work on that. And when you go in there, you may not be as nervous, but showing up on time for the interview is a good way to alleviate some of the stress too, and being prepared, right? But yeah, it's, you know, people are going to get nervous regardless. It's just, you should be prepared about your where you're applying for work and who you're supposed to be speaking to, and feel confident in how you look and how you've prepared to. So, but you might just get thrown in on the spot too for just a surprise interview. Go, yeah, you know, we're hiring right now. Do you have a few minutes? And that can kind of take you aback. So, but if you've kind of prepared ahead of time through the interview questions, you should be okay and be able to understand and defend your resume. So now that you've got the interview under your belt, you're done, you're good. So you're prepping for your first day of work. So get your work clothes ready the night before. Make sure your alarm is set for the right time. Confirm you have transportation to and from work. Have your lunch ready or money ready for lunch. Have your SIN number ready for any paperwork. Bring a void check for direct deposit, and show up 10 to 15 minutes early for your work. Not just that day, but every day. And then just a brief little talk about labor laws. So what are labor laws and where do I find them? So there are provincial labor laws that are put in place to protect the employer and the employee. They let you know your rights as an employee, what you're legally entitled to do or not do, and how you are to be treated. For example, how old you have to be to work, what hours you can work, minimum wage, stat holidays, more. And there are different labor laws in each province. So they might be very close to what each province has, but don't expect the same ones if you work in a different province. For example, there are different, in Saskatchewan, we're allowed 3 weeks holidays, whereas in Alberta, I believe it still stands that you're only allowed 2 weeks holidays. So there are different labor laws for different provinces. Federal labor laws apply to federally ran businesses and jurisdictions, for example, the RC, MP, or federal institutions, penitentiaries, that kind of stuff. Some of these laws are very similar and can be confusing, so always get help if you need help breaking down the law and understanding it. And the laws can be found on the Government of Saskatchewan website or the Government of Canada website. And even if you don't find all the laws you're looking for on there, you can certainly, it'll lead to more links for that information. Yep.
There's a question. What are good questions to ask when the individuals conducting the interview ask you, do you have a question for me?
Yeah, though you should, it's better not to just get up and leave. And so good questions to ask are, when do you think you'll have your mind, like when we have an answer for when the job will be filled? You know, is there anything I can do to improve if I go, you know, how did I do today? Like, it's okay to ask them how you did today, especially if you're new to the interview world. Then, you know, it's okay to say, you know, thank you for your time. Can you give me any tips on how I did today? And you can ask them, you know, how will I be notified, you know, if I got the job? Will I get a notification if I didn't get the job? Because I don't like it when people go out and they apply for a job and they've gone to all this work and it's got this great resume. They, you know, rehearsed their interview questions and they've got the references, and then they go to an interview, and then they're just kind of left hanging. You know, they don't know whether or not they've got the job or not. So I like it when a business actually tells somebody whether or not you got the job, so then you can move forward. So asking them that question, will you inform me, will you tell me if I've got the job or not, and how will you tell me? So, you know, by email, by text, phone call, how? And I feel it puts a responsibility back on the place that you applied at, for letting them know that, yeah, you know, I should be telling people whether or not they got the job, not just the person that got the job, right? That's a good question. So we're almost at the finish line, everybody. So we've got tips on how to keep your job. So get enough sleep every night, okay? and try to get enough sleep. I know it can be stressful that first night before you start your job, but once you get into the routine, it's good to get enough sleep every night. Show up in time for your shift, 10 to 15 minutes early. Be prepared to work. Have your uniform and name tag on, proper shoes, hat, gloves, etc. Be a team player. Try to get along with your coworkers. You might not like everyone you work with, but you still need to find a way to be friendly and courteous and respectful at work. Follow the rules of the business where you work. Take your break and lunch times when you are told to, and don't be late getting back from them. Stay off your cell phone unless it is on your time or it is part of your job to use one. Be respectful to your coworkers and customers. Be patient. No one will expect you to know your job the first day, week, or even month. And ask for help if you aren't sure what to do. There is no such thing as a silly question. Learn from mistakes and work to the best of your abilities every day, and don't compare yourself to how others are doing. Okay? Your job is your job, not somebody else's job. So one of the things I've found along the way researching this webinar and putting things together was there's a site that's called, it's called exactly this, Canada's Top Diversity Winners of 2020. And on here, I just want to make note, these are not in the order that they were chosen, and I only chose to focus on businesses in Saskatchewan. And there's SaskTel, SaskPower, the City of Saskatoon, Shaw, CIBC, and TD Bank. I actually don't deal with any of those places, so, well, except for SaskTel and SaskPower. So I'm not promoting them. It's just that that's pretty fantastic of these places. And I know there are many, 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 many other places that support businesses with people of diversity or intellectual disabilities, and we should support them because it's pretty wonderful. So I just wanted to put that in there so we would have just a kind of a place to focus on a positive thing.
I can tell you from experience, I've worked with SaskTel and they're really good. A lot of big businesses like FCC, SaskTel, they're really looking at creating a big and really good diverse working experience for individuals. They want everybody's expertise and all of the information that they have that they can share to make the place a better place. They have people dispersed all through SaskTel areas doing lots of different jobs, and they have a lot of accommodations that are put in place for people, and they don't have any issues with doing that. They're really good about it. So there's definitely a lot more bigger businesses that are opening up to having really diverse workforces, and it's nice. It's really nice to see. I think SaskTel has like 10 or 15 individuals just working in all different areas, and they really look for strengths, areas that people are strong in, and try to match them with the appropriate job. So
nice. I forgot about FCC. Yeah, that is another one. Yeah.
And then
that might have even been on the list. So yeah.
Yeah, and they're really good too. They have quite a few people dispersed, like in accounting and many different areas.
Right
There's
on.
a comment here. Sorry, go ahead.
Is there a comment?
Yeah. Ask for details about job advancement, safety. Where are the safety features in the office? That type of thing. That's a comment about what to ask during an interview.
Oh, that's a good tip. Yeah. I'm writing these down. I know, Marci, you're writing all these down too, but
oh yes, I'm recording them all. I'm gonna make a form.
Okay. So just a few things to consider before we're done here. So just make a plan and don't get overwhelmed when you feel like quitting. There are many ways to do a resume and cover letter. I think we've learned that along the way here. So just make sure that information is accurate and up to date, and it's correct. Interviews are tough, so it's nice to have somebody to help you out, and just keep rehearsing those interview questions. And so you don't get blindsided by a question and you start freaking out and stress out. So not everyone will be successful the first time they go job searching. It takes time and patience. Ask for help. There are a lot of people that support you and want you to succeed. They just live for things like that, right? So what to focus on to succeed? So understand what your strengths and weaknesses are and be able to articulate that. Take advantage of job hunting resources for people with disabilities. Go on the Labor Market Services website. I find that to be a very valuable website. Attend networking events for people with disabilities. Research to see if there are any workforce recruitment programs in your area. Look for support groups, good support groups, and find reliable and responsible social networking sites for support and jobs. Go to career and job fairs and search multiple job search sites. You know, a lot of this might have changed with COVID. They may not have career and job fairs anymore, but everything is going virtual anyway. So it's pretty cool that you can do all that stuff and still go to a career fair. So just a few more notes here. Did you know L. DuPont in the US conducted a survey of businesses who reported performance ratings of good or above average for 90% of people with disabilities? The L. DuPont study also stated that 86% of employees with a disability have average or above average attendance. The study also showed that businesses rate 97% of workers with disabilities as average or above average in terms of safety. A Harris poll of 920 businesses, that's Canadian, found 88% of workers with disabilities earned performance ratings of good and excellent. In 2008, Compass, which is a research polling firm, found that 78% of Canadians said they were more likely to buy a product or service from a business that has a policy of hiring people with disabilities. So those are good things to know. I am Martha Stewart. So conclusion, everyone deserves an opportunity to be able to work and feel proud of their accomplishments and earn a living. And they deserve that. So when we help individuals that we support to do this, we raise their self-esteem, we help them have ownership of their lives and give them their independence and they have a true sense of pride in what they do.